The conversation around civil war has been bubbling up.
Well, yeah, by you. For a long time now. Hey, I'll give it to the beanie, though. At this point, a couple other people are talking about it, for sure. Who doesn't feel the tension going on in America right now, created, I would say, in large part due to the culture war by all of these Koch brothers funded like every single one of them who's on a repeated basis saying they're taking their country from you.
Donald Trump and his 18 co-defendants, co-conspirators, as the Democrats are calling him, must surrender in 9 days to the Fulton County Jail. There will be no special treatment. Trump will receive a mugshot and be held in a disgusting jail that is so bad, leftists are even bringing it up right now, that the conditions are horrifying and that some people have actually died there.
That's just what leftists are always bringing out. The right, you, are now concerned about prison conditions because your boy's getting locked up. You have been since January 6th. I was like, when the right finally woke up to the fact that, holy shit, apparently these prisons, they're saying that they're not very humane. They're not treating people well, and the living conditions are abhorrent. Some big word they're saying, but yeah, it's worrisome. Yeah, that whole thing.
They want Donald Trump and, I mean, his chief of staff, his lawyers, to surrender themselves to this facility.
Hell yeah.
And this is this is what we're waiting for. And I have a question.
And by the way, if you're right away gonna like get ahead of the whole like, wait, I thought you were an abolitionist, slants. Why are you fucking getting all excited about this? You know, you're soying out to the fact that Trump will go. Well, the current system is in place. It would be nice if that system actually operated as it's supposed to. It doesn't, right? But if there was any sense of equality, and if any march towards that equality, as in any single person should be judged, there's no one above the law, not even the very rich, powerful, and white. I mean, you love to see it. It's more like you're just watching an evening of the scoreboard, or you're just watching bad things happen to bad people. That kind of thing. Does that change my resolve in how the entire system should work and operate? No, it does not.
My question is, what happens if Donald Trump does not surrender? Alongside this, Ron DeSantis.
No, I haven't talked about ID verification. ID verification, your account by providing a government issue ID. This usually blah, 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 blah. I consent to X sharing images of my ID, including biometric data and personal data from my profile with 10 ticks for the purpose of confirming my identity. I also consent to X storing my ID images, including biometric data, for up to 30 days and using it in data from my profile. This is gonna, if this is required, it's gonna kill the fucking, this will be the last gasp of Twitter. Like, that'll be the fucking end of it. The only people who will stay on are the very people who are willing to fucking pay for Twitter now, which is what, like 800,000 crypto bros and fascists. So it'll just be a network of 800,000 crypto bros and fascists. I'm thinking even the fascists won't want to do this because a lot of them are smarter than that. You don't want, if your account is basically dedicated to being like Hitler did nothing wrong, to then fucking have your ID like associated with it, right? I've had people, by the way, reach out to me asking people who are like not my friends, like full on like political enemies, reaching out to me and being like, why did you block me? What's going on here? And so that's like a way I changed my top banner. I was like, I'm not intentionally walking through finding people all day to block. I've just got an extension. It's beautiful. I don't have to think about it. Every time I'm using Twitter, it's just like blah 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 blah. Oh, it feels nice.
DeSantis has come out and said it's partly Trump's own fault. And you know what? Ron DeSantis is right. Donald Trump could have fired many of these people. Donald Trump could have gone after Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump didn't want to fire certain intelligence agency individuals because he was concerned of political backlash. He didn't want to go after Hillary Clinton because he was concerned about political backlash. And he opened the door. He said, don't worry, go do your thing. And now they are gutting and ripping apart this country to go after him. So my question is this.
Okay.
With the news about Ron DeSantis saying that Trump shares some of the blame here, Ron DeSantis is explicitly stating that the charges against Trump are unjust, they're wrong, that Donald Trump could have done something to stop it by weeding out the Soros prosecutors. So here's my question.
There it is.
For Ron DeSantis. If Donald Trump seeks safe
Barely mask off. Yes, I would say that was mask, beanie, and whatever remains of the skull at that point.
harbor in Florida, refusing to surrender, will you extradite? Or will you allow federal forces under the Biden administration to seek to remove Donald Trump and extradite?
Why do you do this for a living when you have no idea how it works? Like, I'm not even an American, and I can clearly see this isn't a political witch hunt by Joe Biden. I'm sorry. This is not a Dark Brandon fucking 5D chess move. These are juries of his peers presented with ample evidence to such a degree that they were like, well, yes, even a president of the United States seems to have committed some very serious crimes here.
This is unprecedented. I have no idea what happens. Maybe many of you do, but my question is this. Donald Trump goes to Mar-a-Lago. He publicly announces that he will not surrender to false charges. Many of his former staff and his lawyers, co-conspirators, they say the same thing. These are fake charges, and we refuse to abide by these demands. Already, Mark Meadows has filed to have the case moved to a federal court so that he can argue the supremacy clause and basically quash the whole thing. So why would they travel to Georgia to surrender to charges that they think are fake? Well, I don't know what's going to happen. I got to say, I think the most likely scenario is that Donald Trump and all the defendants just surrender. But it got me thinking. If Donald Trump stays in Florida, what happens if he just says no? Georgia's a red state, supposedly, but,
You know what's wild about Tim? Oof, I just got the fucking pause for the ages there. He looks possessed. You know how Tim's always trying to push for the Civil War? I think someone just did a cut and paste of the 40 times he's tweeted about it in the past year alone, where it's like, Civil War, this is Civil War, this is going to bring a Civil War, escalation, this means escalation, this means Civil War, Civil War. He's the last person who's going to participate in it. He's going to fucking fence off his compound. It's heavily armed to the teeth. He's got enough chickens to survive for a while, and he is ready to shoot intruders. That's him. Like, he just wants to fucking just ignite a little spark in America, just watch it go off, and then sit back comfortably from the sidelines and be like, let's see what rises from the ashes here. Yeah.
kind of shifts blue, or it's shifting blue. And so I wonder how this would play out. I don't have the answers. Donald Trump travels only to red states from now on, avoiding connections in blue states, or flies private only between red states. Red states refuse to extradite. Blue states agree to extradite. It wouldn't even be so simple. Some red states would absolutely extradite. Would any? I don't know. I don't know. This is the news. Trump is expected to be booked at Fulton County Jail. Amazing.
I agree.
Former President Donald Trump is expected to surrender at the Fulton County Jail. The local sheriff's...
Oh, I assume there's probably a greenhouse activity of some kind. I didn't see that part of it. I didn't even see there could be buildings that have plants in them for sure. There's a lot of other kind of just like cubicles, you know. I forgot what the name of those temporary cubicles that you get when you like have like some schools set them up just like outside. The kind of like those things, you know, but one of them is filled with kind of like a makeshift portables. Yeah, there's portables on the compound. One of those could have maybe some vegetables. I mean, for their sakes, if that's the plan, I hope so. The eggs could only get you so far. You don't want to eat chicken eggs for the rest of your life.
Said Tuesday in a statement, along with the other 18 co-defendants charged on Monday in the Georgia 2020 election. So
he wants the government to pay for a skiff at Mar-a-Lago so he doesn't have to go to Miami to look at the classified documents that are part of the evidence in the discovery. That was my understanding.
Version case. Trump, who was charged with 13 counts, including racketeering, has not publicly indicated when he intends to surrender ahead of the August 25th deadline imposed by Fulton County DA Fani Willis. The statement from the Fulton County Sheriff's Office addressed the key question of where the former president would be arrested.
And just so you know, I mean, like, he's got a long history of this stuff.
49-state landslide. I think it's fair to say Trump's going to win re-election. Vote. As I've stated 1,000,001 times, Donald Trump's going to win. 49-state landslide. And processed as a criminal defendant. Quote, at this point, based on guidance received from the district attorney's office and presiding judge,
He'd be a terrible fortune teller. Yeah, I mean, it's all cold reading, right? Most fortune telling, you're basically, you get a series of information from a subject, and then you kind of find the exact things that you're going to want them to say, as well as what they might possibly have already thought and or said, and then you upplay the things that you get completely correct, and then you downplay the things that you totally miss, and then act as if they were just little blips along the way until you kind of have a much better read on somebody.
It is expected that all 19 defendants named in the indictment will be booked at the Rice Street Jail, the statement said. Keep in mind, defendants can turn themselves in at
Tim's got racist teeth. I don't think I've ever heard that one before.
anytime. The jail is open 24/7. Also, due to the unprecedented nature of this case, some circumstances may change with little to no warning. Most defendants charged in Fulton County are typically booked at the Fulton County Jail. Fulton County Sheriff Pat Labatt previously suggested he wants to treat the defendants charged in the Trump election subversion case the same as any other defendant would be treated. Unless someone tells me differently, we will be following normal practices. It doesn't matter your status. We will have mugshots ready for you. That's impossible. Donald Trump has Secret Service protection. Some have suggested if Donald Trump does not submit to the charges, the Secret Service will be obligated to apprehend and bring him in. I do not believe that is true. That's outside the jurisdiction of the Secret Service to arrest the president himself. But I don't know. That could be wrong. They say
But I do want to get you scared and have you thinking, is this escalation? I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to have to ask yourself a question. Two scenarios are before you. One, the president of the United States himself was trying to actually destroy the democratic process and assume power in an authoritarian way. Or there's some deep state conspiracy where Dark Brandon is trying to take down his political opponents because he knows he's going to lose again to them.
Sheriff will now have to negotiate with Secret Service and Trump's attorneys on the logistics of Trump's surrender. Defendants who are not immediately arrested upon indictment, as was the case for Trump and his associates, usually negotiate bond if applicable, as well as other terms of release with the district attorney's office. Rudy Giuliani, Trump's former lawyer, who was also charged in the case, said Tuesday on WABC Talk Radio that he would pick a day next week to surrender to authorities, adding, "There has to be bail, I imagine. Kind of silly for me to have bail. I mean, I showed up there voluntarily and testified." The 41-count indictment unsealed Monday night lays out a sweeping investigation led by Willis into some of the most egregious efforts by Trump's allies to meddle in the 2020 election. Blah, blah. We get it. And this is the big question. The question of whether or not we accelerate, escalate, or whether or not Trump simply surrenders to all of this. DeSantis says Trump shares blame for legal troubles because he had 3 years to fire FBI Chief Christopher Wray, let Hillary Clinton off the hook, and failed to fire Soros-backed prosecutors. A bold statement, Ron DeSantis. A bold statement. I like Ron DeSantis. I really do. I just think he's running a bad campaign. He could do better. He's got to pick things up. But I said this with the federal indictments. I said this with the New York indictments. Donald Trump could go to Florida, and Ron DeSantis could earn massive public support from Trump supporters and from Trump himself. If Ron DeSantis.
So the guy who predicted a 49-50 state landslide victory for Donald Trump in the last election is giving political advice, and that advice is basically, Ron DeSantis, why don't you campaign for Trump? Just really get ahead of this, become his buddy, bosom buddy, if you will, get that milk straight into the veins, and then who knows? You could get a lot of support from Trump supporters. Could be what you're lacking. Might be the exact, special move, the power move, if you will, to get through this.
This comes out right now and says, Donald J. Trump lives in Florida at Mar-a-Lago. And if he is at home in Mar-a-Lago, I will not have state police or law enforcement seek to apprehend and extradite him. These charges are trumped up. These charges are political, and we will not play a role, nor will I allow any law enforcement to enter Florida territory for the purpose of extraditing Donald Trump. Could you imagine if Ron DeSantis said that? Well, here's the play, Donald Trump. Put Ron DeSantis to the test. You go to Florida and you say, what say you, Ron DeSantis? And there's the question. Will Ron DeSantis simply say, no, I'm sorry, Donald, I can't get involved in this conflict with Georgia. You know, they're a neighboring state to the north, and so we're going to have no choice but to have you arrested due to our agreements with Georgia. You will be arrested. You will be driven to the jail where you will sit in a jail cell. This is unprecedented stuff. The conversation around civil war has been bubbling up.
Well, yeah, by you. For a long time now. Hey, I'll give it to the beanie, though. At this point, a couple other people are talking about it, for sure. Who doesn't feel the tension going on in America right now, created, I would say, in large part due to the culture war by all of these Koch brothers funded assholes? Like every single one of them who's on a repeatedly basis saying they're taking their country from you. I mean, the president himself has been trying to fucking provoke a civil war on his behalf. I'm just fucking surprised that so many people have just bought it. You know, you've got this man baby who's fucking, he obviously just couldn't handle the loss of an election to such a degree that his own fucking members of staff were like, oh yeah, you lost, motherfucker. Like, we're not going down with you. Bill Barr, way smarter than Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani, what did you get? That's the part I don't understand. Like, why were you so fiercely loyal nonstop over and over where you're just like, but everyone else can see it. You can see the writing on the wall. Like, people much smarter than you are just like, no, I'm not going down for this asshole. Fuck him. A loss is a loss. But now the very idea of like, okay, well, civil war could be coming. A lot of people talking about this, myself included, you know? Little hint here and there, obviously.
And oh boy, everybody's got me on their minds. I have been trending since yesterday. It's funny, though, they say I'm trending, but I'm not really trending. It's like in this sphere I am. I'd love to be trending nationwide or worldwide. It's rarely, it's happened a few times, but rarely. But everyone in this space is asking the question about whether or not I am correct in my assessment about civil war. Well, look, I mean, it's not, I didn't make this up, okay? It was that Princeton professor who said you're in a cold civil war. And it's an unoriginal idea coming from me. I just happen to say it a lot because I agree with many of these people. But we can defer to Stephen Marsh.
So Tim Pool has been trying to push a narrative and his own version of the world into, like, it's one of those things where you want to manifest reality, right? If I talk this way, if I present things this way, if consistently kind of twist reality itself into a version, then maybe I can in turn enact real world changes. And so he's been trying to do that ever since he, like, you know, his first really big documentary where he got to go and talk about how, you know, Swedish immigrants and immigrant rates are completely destroying the country, increasing crime. And so, you know, he travels there, he speaks to a bunch of people, mostly neo-Nazi far-right fascists who are white supremacists who obviously have a grind to gear with any non-white people entering their country and have a lot of things to say about that. He at one point interviews a terrorism expert, someone who actually does this for a living, and never broadcast it. Like, luckily, Hey It's Vadim got the whole tapes and they're released on the youtube.com/@HeyIt'sVadim channel if you want to watch them in their entirety. But the guy shut down everything Tim Pool was saying. Like, just one after the other. When Tim Pool would bring up his weird Tim Pool version of the world where, like, yeah, but they come over here and then they create like exclusion zones and rapes and that all happens mostly because they're coming from this part of the world. And it's just like time after time again, the extremism that we track and are worried about is actually white nationalist extremism. It seems to be the number one cause of violence when it comes to terrorism in this country. And it's what we truly have to worry about. And actually, more often than not, a lot of that is provoked by people misinterpreting what immigration does to a country. You see immigration again actually have, like, and you can tell why Tim Pool didn't want to air this. Because, like, just every single thing he thinks, his weird twisted version of the world, is just not true, or at least it doesn't work out in the way he wants. He wants the bad guys to be his bad guys, you know? He wants the good guys to be his good guys, and then he wants the civil war to play out in kind, because that way, well, it'll separate the wheat from the chaff, and you know, and I think it also plays into a large part of the psyche as to why you would own a monstrously huge mansion bunker with a bunch of fucking weapons. Like, that place is ready. Maybe it won't last for an exceptionally long time, but hey, if you got a full staff of people, you know, friends, and they're all trained, heavily armed, you've got supplies, you've got chicken wranglers, and ideally maybe a carrot or two to try and, you know, not all go Jordan Peterson scurvy like, then yeah, you might be well poised for this upcoming civil war that you're hoping to provoke. And to anyone who takes civil war lightly, especially a second civil war in the United States, please understand the people who would have a lot of training time, militias, military-like training, as well as weaponry, are a lot of these far-right supremacist groups in America. They're the ones who are training for this. They're the ones who are preparing for this. They're the ones who are going to be committing acts of terrorism brazenly, such as cutting off supply lines to crucial areas, such as taking on and or even sometimes maybe partnering with the police. Who knows how far this will go? But no matter how it plays out, it'll be devastating, chaotic, and bloody. Like, if unless you're a complete clown, right, who's got some weird fucking, I don't know, you've been watching The Walking Dead season 3 long enough to feel that you're ready for the future, you would see it as a fucking horrifying outcome, the likes of which you should work and do everything in your power to prevent. And if you're asking, well, then what's the left's answer to this? The same thing that has always been, that as there is more inequality, as there is more suffering, as there is more mass alienation, there is going to be more people turning to dictators, strongmen, fascists for answers, who are going to vilify other groups, such as, again, Jewish people, trans people, gay people, queer people, immigrants, brown and black people. That's typically how these things play out. That you can already see, like, the fucking the very mentality of some of these pundits. The other day, I found an old recording of Matt Walsh arguing with his co-host on the radio, where Matt Walsh was being too racist for his co-host. Matt Walsh was talking about how part of the problem is that there needs to be more Anglo-Saxon white babies. There's no such thing as people coming to America as immigrants and actually becoming American, what he sees as American, what he sees as Judeo fucking Christian Western values, the glory of the empire, all that kind of shit. Well, that's white. And of course it is to them. These are white supremacists, right? And his partner, who has apparently married a person of color, his radio show partner, not his real partner, but his radio show co-host, who's married a person of color, who's had 5 children with her, tries to push back on that, saying like, well, am I part of the problem because I've not had pure, like, Aryan babies, blah, blah, blah. And then he just deflects and goes right to, well, I mean, you're trying to make it sound like I'm saying something racist. I'm not, okay? I have no problem with if you want to have, you know, a black wife, if people want to have interracial marriage, I have no problem with that. But I'm just saying that the extinction of the superior Anglo-Saxon race is happening, and you have to have white babies. It's the only solution to this. More white babies. We have to secure a home. Like, he's saying the 14 words over and over in different variations in that fucking recording. And I thought that would be one of those things. And sure enough, it obviously, in center to left spaces, everyone's aghast. But then I saw Charlie fucking Kirk come out and be like, Matt Walsh said nothing wrong. Like, even Matt Walsh sometimes tries to distance himself from the old radio show kind of super racist stuff by saying, oh, what, I said some naughty words when I was in high school, or sorry, in college. Yeah, naughty words in college, blah, blah. But it's way more horrifying to me to see the founder of Turning Point USA, the #1 political youth outreach program director, fucking Charlie Kirk himself, look to what Matt Walsh is saying and say he's saying nothing wrong. I said, no. This is what we're all on board with. Yes, we want to preserve the Anglo-Saxon superior race, and that is what America is and what makes America great. And yes, of course, there can be non-white Americans, and we're not going to say they can't be, but they are inferior. They are inferior to, again, the superiority of the Anglo-Saxon race, who does need to dominate and subjugate other. This is the neo-Nazi stuff you would find on Stormfront. This is fucking the shit you would find in Nazi blogs on 4chan. That be relegated to those corners of the internet, and now all of a sudden they're trying to mainstream it. Like, this is not the only aspect of them trying to mainstream fascism, by the way. The same thing was happening with the entire Ye arc. When Ye was palling around with neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes, what was every single host trying to normalize? The Jewish question. To normalize that idea that, hey, by the way, did you know Jewish people control all the media? Did you know Jewish people control the world? Like, and that's as far as they wanted him to go. Ye went too far. When he was saying, talking about how much he loves Hitler, how much he loves the Nazis, blah, 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 you could see Alex Jones trying to pull back, oh, you actually love the Nazis, right? You love the costumes, just the costumes. And he's like, no, I love... And it was like, okay, well, this is the quiet part. You're saying the quiet part out loud right now. Supposed to have a little bit of distance between this, you know? But it's like, that's the part that's truly horrifying to me. Not that fucking Matt Walsh is a fucking fascist, neo-Nazi, theocratic, white supremacist. We knew that. We always knew that. The guy was fucking years ago doing book burnings with his Nazi buddies and judging their fucking diaper wrestling competitions. Yes, a guy with the swastika, a grown-ass man in a diaper wrestling another man. That was Matt Walsh. What's way more scary is the normalization of all this by the rest of the fucking pundit class, by the rest of the fucking the right to the far right, where all of a sudden a lot of these concepts, which used to be relegated to, holy shit, this is fucking, you're doing neo-Nazi stuff right now, is normalized. And look at Tim Pool. Tim Pool, who's got this fucking rotating carousel, white supremacists that go on the show. It never used to be when there was a mass shooting where a mass shooter killed a whole bunch of queer folk that the answer was fuck around and find out. That never used to be the way. Especially not like even 4 years ago when I was covering this kind of stuff. It would be thoughts and prayers. Yeah, it sucks. The guy's deranged. He's sick. He's got mental illness. Lone wolf. That's what this was. We need good guys with guns to take out the bad guys with guns. That was the rhetoric. That's what they used to say. Now it's like, well, I mean, you guys were holding a grooming festival. What did you think was going to happen? People were calling for wood chippers. What did you think was going to happen? And that's really scary to see. And like, before you get too frightened, obviously, this is again a very heavily funded and very loud sounding minority of people. The overwhelming amount of majority of Americans don't want the same things they do. But once fascism takes hold, once it starts to gain power and traction and actual authority over others, you see how quickly people turn and get in line. Like, not every single person in Germany hated Jewish people the same way that the Nazis hated Jewish people. Not every single one. Not every single one of them was ready to buy into things like the Jewish question. Is it actually true that Jewish people control all the banks? That's weird, because of the 4 major banks in Germany, only one of them has a Jewish executive director. The rest of them don't. I mean, why are we? But it's what everyone is saying now. And now there's all these posters over town. Now there's all these posters with all these characters, and then we're supposed to call them vermin and talk about how they have beady eyes and talk about how they want to drink the blood of children and all this kind of stuff. And now we've begun dehumanizing Jewish people to such a degree that we can promote our anti-Semitism and justify the very act of genocide, which is a fucking something that doesn't just like, people get in line is the scary thing about this. This is why the work of a Tim Pool right now is so dangerous, or the work of all of these fucking pundits, even the ones who don't have in their hearts a deep-seated desire to see eradication projects. Like, look at the Quartering. You know, the Quartering gets so sad when he sees people talking about how they're going to eliminate all trans people, because he's attracted to Blair White. And because he likes Blair White, he's all of a sudden like, oh, but do we have to get rid of all trans people? What about Blair White? You know, can we have exceptions? I don't know if I'm on board with all of this. You know, you guys are getting kind of scary.
Smart guy. I had a great conversation with him. He's more of a liberal, multicultural democracy guy. He's Canadian, by the way. And he says we are in civil strife. Civil strife is the period that occurs just before civil war. And I think he is 100% correct. That is to say, Bleeding Kansas. Bleeding Kansas was a 7-year period that happened just before the American Civil War, where people were killing each other in Kansas over whether or not Kansas would become a slave or a free state. Ultimately, as the conflict escalated, you entered nationwide conflict with the start of the Civil War. But most people don't think of Bleeding Kansas as the start of the Civil War, but Bleeding Kansas is 100% the Civil War period. Semantics, whatever. Call it.
But I say with a lot of authority that it did take place in that era. Semantics, I know. Look, tomato, tomato. One person's ear is another person's fact.
Whatever you want. I don't know. I think that depending on what happens next determines whether or not history will write about the communist revolution, the neo-Marxist revolution in the United States, the rise of the military dictatorship. This could go the way of the Spanish Civil War. It could go the way of Weimar Germany. It could go the way of the Bolshevik Revolution. It could go the way of the American Civil War. I honestly have no idea what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to know if you could try and talk a little bit about the conditions that led to any of those events. I'd like to know, because like trying to compare and contrast the Spanish Civil War, for example, and the rise of fascism and Franco's dictatorship, I'd like to know what parts of that you find are comparable to what is going on in the United States right now. Or just list a whole bunch of events and then say, by the way, you know those things, right? Okay, well, imagine if that happened here. I mean, I don't know.
I can tell you this. This next week is critical in determining where we go. Think about it this way. Right now, leftist neo-Marxist forces are demanding that leadership in the MAGA faction, whatever you want to call it, surrender without dispute, without conflict.
Where? Where? Where are the neo-Marxists? Like who? Are you talking about Bernie Sanders? He doesn't have as much power as you think he is, and he's not a self-proclaimed neo-Marxist. The guy is pushing for like sock-dem policies. You should be so lucky, America. It's like, hey, do you like in Scandinavian countries where a robust social welfare system ends up paying for a lot of things in society that, broadly speaking, should just generally be done? If you have the money, you can afford it. It does make for a much healthier and happier society. Isn't it weird how all these countries fucking consistently, time after time, report that they have really high levels of satisfaction, of happiness and stuff, when they don't have to think about, oh my god, I may have broken a finger. Oh well, can't go get that checked out, or my kids can't eat. That's the choice I gotta make. It's weird how it's like a stressed out, sexless society. Everyone is like angry all the time. It's weird how people are fucking turning on each other. Odd how that happens. Must be because they deeply care about Donald Trump's rights. Like, if you honestly wanted to provoke a fucking second civil war over Donald fucking Trump, that is the saddest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, you can add the fact that, like, territorial expansion was one of the, like, you know, provocations that led to the first American Civil War, but it was also based on the right to own and sell humans, right? And whether or not that was something that certain states were willing to give up, especially because of the financial changes and economic changes that'll have on them. It's a lot of fucking, I don't know, big items, heavy ticket items, it sounds like, compared to man baby can't accept loss. One man baby can't accept a fucking loss and then tried to do an authoritarianism and failed. And it's like, all right, to arms. I mean, I guess the glimmer of hope in all this is that you can see how many people are actually showing up to, like, the fucking Trump is innocent rallies. People seem kind of burnt out on that whole, like, oh yes, we will go to battle for you, sir. Because even right-wingers are having a hard time, because everyone is.
Surrender. Literal. Surrender. Lay down. Give up. It's over.
And that's nonsense. Again, this is like, does the rule of law apply to all? And so if you're the law and order party, if you're the, like, we love our cops, then this is just something you should be like, oh, okay, well, then it's good that someone who may be guilty is facing consequences for their actions. Not, this means war. Yep, no. We have to go and die for the fucking man baby who couldn't accept the election.
Now, of course, Trump and the 18 other defendants may say this is but a battle in the legal war of a cold civil war, and so we will, to keep tensions calm. But that's critical. What if Trump says, I refuse to surrender? Give me liberty or give me death or something like this. Trump's refusal to surrender will crank the dial up past 11. That's all I can say. I mean, think about the ramifications of Trump and any of these co-defendants not surrendering.
I mean, I hope they all do. And it's also a beautiful thing to see Rudy Giuliani finally fucking implicated in all this.
What does his post from Genocide Watch say? 1, classification. Yes, this meme has gone around quite a bit. And it was going around a few years ago.
Mike Sarinovich, fucking the dude who wrote a blog on how to do sexual assault. This is who we're going to. A nonpartisan group that tracks global genocides as a warning system. Where are the conservatives and Trump supporters at, according to this? Oh my god. You understand that as a MAGA hat wearer, you are not a protected class? Do you get this? The same thing applies to me as a leftist. If I'm a socialist, if I'm an avowed and proud socialist, I don't get to have protected class status for my beliefs. I wasn't born this way, I'm sorry to tell you. Socialists are not born, neither are MAGAs. There's not a bunch of MAGAs who were born, came out of the womb with the red hat affixed to their heads already, or the beanies themselves. It's honestly, it's so pathetic. It shows you what precious lives you've all held. If all of a sudden you're like, yes, I mean, there's no one facing greater genocide right now than Trump supporters. Look at the stages. Like, I'm not joking. This is not even a fucking meme. This is what he's talking about right now.
So let's break it down. Classification. Identifying the group of people for whom you want to remove. Yes, maggots, they call them. Trump supporters, Trumpians. Okay. Symbolization. What does that mean?
This is so clown shoes. Holy shit.
Stuff as an insult to banana republics. They're growing angry that traffickers are bringing children and drugs over the border. They can't seem to get any action done. So they form a militarized faction. Some of these factions already exist. There were stories about the Minutemen, I think they called themselves, years ago.
Oh my God. Any correlation?
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
Thank you kindly to our Lord and Saviors Peyton L. Just and Xander Corvus. Without you, we are nothing. And now, a shout out to our Knights of the Square Table. Amazing Flesh, Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, DM Rivera, Doug Cady, Everything Important, Hegbard Celine, Izzy Solidarity, La Media Panza, Matthew Scarborough, Multimondi, Nettle, Omni, Peanut Butter Blonde, Political Papi, Quiet 185, Rachel K, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Kubi, Cernicus, Spinach Monster, Stellar Vision, Sebastian Dimmel, Thomas, Trevbot EXE, Lucidry, Words Greenwood, Cheryl Alvarez, Tony Perkins, Thomas, O'Pecker, Travis McClinton, and Victoria Bell. Thank you so much. And a huge shout out to all the other people who make this entire show possible. Without you, it would not exist. If you can support us, please go to patreon.com/theserfs, and even $1 can help unlock all of the little goodies and help make this show entirely possible.